Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope you all had a great week. Today, we're doing 3 murderous encounters. I hope you enjoy, and always watch your back. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. This strange conversation between what seems to be a woman and her grandson was found on a mobile phone in an investigation. I worked on it a while back. I am a homicide detective, and the case details I cannot share on this platform. The case is closed, but I am still trying to get answers on what really was going on here. The speech-to-text transcription of the call is provided here. Hello? Grandma, are you alright?
Are you there, honey?
Yeah, how are you doing? Is everything okay? It's pretty late.
Oh, sure. Everything's fine. I was just checking in on you, honey.
Are you sure? You sound sick. Check your temperature. You might have a fever.
Oh, I already did, and everything seems normal. I'm just wondering if it's something I ate. I have to be honest, I guess I do feel a little under the weather today, and my knees and ankles are hurting.
You took your meds?
Honey, I'm 84 years old, but I still remember to take my damn medicine. I don't have Alzheimer's yet.
Alright, Grandma. What's that, Grandma?
What, honey?
I thought you said something.
Oh, just fussing at the cat.
Silence for 15 seconds. She groans. Grandma, you okay?
Fine, something broke loose.
What do you mean, something broke loose?
My ankle. Honey, it's oozing shit.
Grandma, what happened?
Oh, thank you. No worries, dear. He's cleaning it up.
I'm on my way, alright? Did you hurt yourself?
Oh.
Stay on the line. I'll be there in 10. You did take your medicine, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, hi there, sweetie.
Grandma, I'm still here. Is everything okay?
Yep. Oh, look, there's Grandpa. He's right there in the doorway.
What? Grandpa? What do you mean, Grandma?
Yeah, come over here, baby. Sit down next to me.
Is there someone there, Grandma?
Yeah, babe, it's Grandpa. He's in the doorway, but he won't come sit with me.
It's not Grandpa. Hang on. I'm calling the police. Stay on the line. A second call to 911 was made on the phone at about this time.
Police? Why? Hey, Grandpa, come over here, baby. You didn't tell me you were gonna visit.
Stay put, Grandma. The cops are on the way, and so am I.
No, Grandpa, please, don't go.
Hang on. I'm almost there.
We were gonna play his favorite game. Catch the snake. Climb the walls. Oh, you've gotta help me. He's biting me. He's biting my ankle. Deadly venom.
I'm pulling in. Hang on.
Oh, the pus. Grandpa, stop! Stop!
This was followed by a shrill scream, a bang, and then the phone cut off. When the police arrived, the woman in question had died due to loss of blood from an ankle wound. No one was found. The man who made the call was not there, and neither was the supposed intruder. This is as much information that was allowed to be shared. I'm trying to figure this out, and it still baffles me, unlike any unsolved case I've investigated to this day. Autopsy report. As I have stated before, this is very limited information that I can legally share with you all. I dug up the old autopsy report of the old woman. Her prints found that she was named Tabitha Matson. She was 78 years old at the time of death. This doesn't add up to what was said during the phone call. I wonder if something could have been done to her that mixed up her age perception. Her cause of death: blood loss from a lacerated left ankle, wound made from teeth, no saliva, Her body did have traces of metoclopramide and digoxin, and high doses of pain medication. It just seemed to be the usual drugs for an old woman, the pain meds used for the wound. Here is the crime scene report while I'm at it. Victim fell to the floor and struggled for some time with the attacker on the left ankle, biting. There was splatters of blood on the couch beside her, and pools of it on the floor where she was found, tested to be her own. The entrance door had been tried with a key. The front of the key had broken off into the doorknob. Obviously the grandson in a rush. Strangely enough, no prints were found of the grandson's, and there was no sign of where he could have gone after entering in such a hurry. Mobile iPhone found on the ground in the kitchen, from which we traced the 911 call to. A second iPhone was found a few feet away from the victim's body, where we traced the original call to the first iPhone, and were able to transcribe it. There was no sign of the supposed intruder. We hadn't much to go off of, and all the evidence was leading nowhere, so the case was closed and marked as unsolved. The woman had no living family members except for the unnamed grandson. On those long summer nights in Pittsburgh, we would sit under the towering sycamore in the cornfields behind my house and talk about life. I remember that night when he told me what he had been planning. I had received a text that afternoon. "Meet me at the usual spot. I need you." "Hey, Ollie," he said. His voice was hoarse and quiet. I turned to face him. "Remember when my dad married Christine? And I got all depressed and shit?" I furrowed my brow, wondering where the conversation was going. "Yeah, why?" The sky was painted with broad strokes of orange and pink as the sun set over the hills behind my house. Stars began to shine through the thin, rippled clouds. Ben paused and let out a sigh before responding to my question. "I never really talked to you about it, but I was so deep in that shit, man. Christine, she can be mean, and my dad married her even though it'd only be a few months since." Ben stopped mid-sentence before resuming. "Sometimes I scare myself." His arms were crossed tightly over his chest, and he refused to meet my gaze. "What do you mean?" I asked him, quietly. At least he turned to face me. He looked haunted. His eyes were empty. "I'll tell you, but if you tell anyone else, I'll kill you." His stare was intense. It was scary. I let out a small, nervous chuckle. "I'm not kidding. I will kill you," he repeated. Uneasy, I shifted away from him. Tuesday was my parents' anniversary. The first one since Mom died. My dad didn't even care. People cope in different ways, Ben. I'm sure he didn't mean— "Let me finish," he said, sternly. A fire burned behind his eyes. Needless to say, I shut up. That night, I decided I had a choice to make. Die or kill them. The former seemed a lot easier. I took a whole bottle of my dad's anxiety meds. His voice began to shake quietly, and I listened in stunned silence. But I went into the bathroom and made myself puke. Because I'm too much of a coward to even do it correctly. That's how much of a mess I am, Ollie. Slowly, a tear rolled down his cheek and settled on his chin. He quickly wiped it away with the sleeve of his sweatshirt and buried his head in his arms. His shoulders began to shake with silent sobs. I can't do this anymore." I had never seen him so distraught. "Shit, Ben, I don't even know what to say," I said. I gently put my hand on his shoulder, but at the gentlest touch, Ben's entire body went rigid. "Don't touch me!" he yelled. His breathing was quick and shallow, his eyes bloodshot and glassy. After a few moments, His breathing slowed. I'm sorry. It's nothing, I said immediately. We sat there for hours, until stars poked holes in the darkening sky and crickets chirped loudly. We didn't say a word. I didn't touch him, or even look at him. We just existed together for a while. I was startled when he finally spoke. I should go home. We said goodbye, and as he turned to walk back to town, I said one more thing to him. Be safe, Ben. You can always count on me. I hope you know that. A small smile flashed across his face as he heard that, and he once again turned to leave. It was around 2 months later when I got a phone call from Ben. Until that moment, he had seemed much happier. He smiled. He laughed. He seemed like himself again. We all have bad days, right? Although, sometimes when I looked at him, I saw the look he gave me. That not all there look he gave me right before he said, "I'll kill you," and again, hurt himself or kill them. My birthday had come and gone, freshly 17. I decided to visit one of Ben's baseball games. He got 3 runs, and our high school team won the game. It was a good day. It was around 4 p.m. that night when my phone began to ring. "Ollie?" Ben's voice crackled through the phone. "Yeah, what's up?" I responded. Can you come over?" His voice sounded oddly monotonous. Besides, when was the last time he wanted me to go to his house? He hated it there. I mean, yeah, but are you okay? I asked. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just come over soon." A wave of uneasiness washed over me as I arrived at Ben's house. Shaking slightly, I knocked on the door. There was no response, so I knocked again. "Just come in. The door is open." Ben's voice was barely loud enough to hear through the door. I turned the handle. I will never forget the scene that laid out before me at that moment. In the entryway, 2 bodies lay sprawled out on the floor. Before I could even process that, though, I tripped over something. Looking down, I saw what Ben had used to ruin our lives. Long and skinny, the steel of his baseball bat was coated in a viscous layer of blood. It had oozed onto the surrounding floor. The walls were splattered with it. I was living in my own personal horror movie. The thick, metallic scent of blood filled the air and filled my lungs. I felt myself spinning. I saw the room spinning around me. My head hurt. No, my head was killing me. I had to leave. I had to get out. I couldn't stay there for one more moment. My stomach turned violently and I heaved. My best friend did this. Not my best friend. He couldn't have done this. He would never have done this. It was just impossible. I couldn't breathe. But in all my panic, all I could do was stand there, quivering. What the hell did you do?" I breathed. Ben didn't respond. He sat on the bottom stair of the staircase ahead. After a moment, though, he spoke. "Bring me the bat." "Why?" "Just bring me the bat." The flatness of his tone was terrifying. I was afraid that I would be next, but defying him would have been worse. Slowly, I bent down and picked up the baseball bat, and shaking, I walked over to him and offered it. He didn't take it from me. "Your prints are all over that thing now. You better help me clean this up." As I looked at him, there was something different. He had that same look in his eye. The one he had when he threatened me. Blood was smeared on his face, and his eyes were puffy and dark. I'll help you," I stuttered. "But why did you pick me? Why did you do this?" "I thought I told you," Ben said. "It was either me or them. My mom deserves better. They're rotting in hell now, like they deserve to be." His manner of speaking was matter-of-fact and cold, not like the Ben I knew. "And I picked you because you offered." "I offered?" "You can count on me. That's what you said. Don't take that back now." And with that, Ben stood up and walked up to the stairs. I stood there, staring at the bloody bat in my hands. I heard the shower turning on upstairs. Slowly, I got to work. I don't know what possessed me. I'd like to think that it was pure fear for my own life. That I was manipulated into becoming an accomplice. Deep down, though, I worry. I worry that I was just as bad as Ben. That I was a dangerous psychopath as well. Despite all of that, I rid the floor of blood and wiped down the walls. I wrapped the bodies in beach towels and cringed as I touched their cold skin. Looking at them, I could only imagine the smiling, kind-hearted people they had once been. That said, I didn't know what Ben's home life was like behind closed doors. God only knows how awful it must have been to warrant that type of brutality. Eventually, Ben returned, his hair still dripping wet. "All right, put them in your trunk," he said flatly. Where are we taking them?" I responded quietly. "The sycamore." I was lucky that my parents were out of town. We buried them under that tree that night. Our spot would forever be tainted with the knowledge that 2 innocent people were left to rot between the roots of our tree. I wanted to kick, to scream, to cry. Why are you doing this? What happened to my friend? But all I could do in the moment was listen to Ben's orders. You'd think that an experience like that wouldn't just go away, but it did. Ben was out of the school for a week. He had called the police after we buried the bodies, claiming that his parents were nowhere to be found. The investigation continued for a few days, but with no obvious leads. It slowly became a lost cause. When he came back, he was his old self again. He smiled, he laughed, he raised his hand in class, and he sat next to me at lunch. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Ben and I slowly drifted apart during our senior year. He continuously tried to be near me, to hang out with me, to be friends with me like we had been before. But I had been too deeply affected by what had happened. I gave him flat answers when he asked any questions. When he wanted to make plans, I said I was busy. Sometimes, I would wonder if the murder even happened in the first place. Ben never seemed to remember that they happened, anyways. Maybe it was all just a bad dream. That thought was the only thing that kept me sane when those memories were brought to the front of my mind. It wasn't real. It wasn't my fault. Even so, I was in a fragile state of mind. Deep down, I knew for a fact that I had helped my best friend murder 2 people, which is why I was so shaken when I received an email from Ben. "Oliver, I know it's been years since we've seen each other, or even talked to each other, but I'll be back in Pittsburgh next week for the holidays, and I was wondering if you wanted to meet up. You know, like we used to, under that giant tree near your house. Just let me know. Ben Daly." I panicked when I read that message, because I knew what had to be done. I had to know the truth behind what happened in high school. So, on that day after Christmas, I waited under our tree. Luckily, my parents still lived in the same old farmhouse, so it wasn't a long walk. As I sat on the rough remnants of last season's corn stalks, I was whisked away to the moment Ben and I had spent here so long ago. The moment when this whole awful thing began. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around to see Ben. Barely any different from the last time I'd even seen him. He stopped in his tracks, and for a moment, we stared at each other, unmoving. "Ben?" I said quietly. His face split into a smile. I stood up, and he approached me before wrapping his arms around me in a tight embrace. I hesitated before returning the hug. "Wow, it's been so long," I said. "I can't believe it's you." We sat next to each other, leaning against the rough bark of the tree. A bitter breeze drifted past us. Maybe this meeting wouldn't be as bad as I thought. We sat there for a while, reminiscing. It felt like I was back in the 10th grade, spending a night shooting the shit with my best friend. This was the Ben I wanted to remember. Before we knew it, the sun began to set. "I should go before it gets too dark. The wife will worry, you know?" I said. "But before I go, can we address the elephant in the room?" "What do you mean?" He cocked his head at me like a confused puppy. "You know. What happened with, Christine?" My voice trailed off. Was that a dream after all? Did I alienate myself from my best friend for no reason? Suddenly, something shifted. The entire sky seemed to darken. Ben's face immediately sunk into an emotionless state. "Damn," he whispered. "I was kinda hoping you wouldn't remember." My heart stopped. "What do you mean? Did that actually happen?" Ever since then, I didn't know if I was crazy or if I made it up all or... Neither did I. I've been driving myself insane for so long. I think I'm a psychopath. It's too late now, I guess. You've just confirmed something that I was really worried about. I guess I did the same for you too. You don't need to worry too much about it though. I have a solution for both of us, Ollie. I saw his hand move to his hip, through the dimming light. A flash of steel, a glimpse of polished wood, a knife. "And, what would that solution be?" I responded, trying not to make my fear obvious. He didn't respond. Almost instinctively, my hand moved to my side. I gripped the cold steel of the old pistol on my hip. One shot, one small explosion of light and gunpowder and vengeance, and it was over. I refused to live in fear anymore. My dad was an amateur magician. He always used to amaze me. It comes in helpful recently, as lockdown turned my 9-year-old into a bundle of unending energy. The card tricks had worn thin, though, and after a month, the same ones didn't carry the same weight. His super curious eyes would follow my fingers, and he'd worked out all but one. It was nice while it lasted. "Show me a new one!" He whined at me. "I don't have any more," and he pouted. That was a lie. There was one, and not one I'd ever learned how my father did. But being 30 years older, I could take a guess. It was like those Halloween tricks, where you blindfold the children and hand them spaghetti to symbolize intestines, or a couple of grapes as eyes. Not as gross as that, but it came with a similar amount of dread. I wasn't sure if he was old enough. I didn't want to scare him, but the sense of excitement it gave him echoed in me when he was amazed. It was simple to perform from what I remember. My father had recently moved to a home. His dementia had worsened. So, our guest room was full of his belongings, and I remembered packing away the box I used to gaze at in awe as a child. A wooden box, about 2 feet by 1 foot, oak or walnut, with a varnish that shimmered in the light. I mentioned it to my wife, and she was skeptical. She recalled the stories I told her about when I was a child, and was shown the trick. I promised I'd tone it down, but Joey would love it. Reluctantly, she agreed, and said that if I scared him, I had to calm him down, even if it meant sleeping on the floor in his room. The spare room was more full than I expected, having shoved all his things in here so haphazardly, a very inefficient use of space. It took me a while to get to the box, and when I did, I admit it, I was a little tired out. I sat next to it. Opening it released a stale smell of my father's house. The air kept locked away by the perfect woodworking. I wondered if my father made it. I'd never asked him. I suspected he wouldn't remember if I asked him about it now. Inside was a leather-bound deck of cards. Seeing them in front of me, memories flooded back. Happy ones. And with them came a tinge of melancholy. That was okay though. It was mine now and I was passing it on. I rifled through the contents and found what I was looking for, a black smoking pipe. A collapsed top hat, and a pair of leather slippers. The inside, a soft sheepskin. I removed the contents and headed out. This would take a little planning, so I put the slippers behind the radiator at the top of the stairs. They needed to be warm. The other two props I brought downstairs and then placed them next to my chair.
Have you got another one?
Joey said moments later. I do, I said with a wry smile. But not now, later, after dinner. Make sure you do your homework your mother has set for you.
But Dad...
He whined. After dinner. We enjoyed our food. Joey wolfed his down so quick I'd barely started mine before he asked to leave the table. Have you done your homework yet? He nodded. I looked at my wife.
He has,
she said, as surprised as I was.
I have to say, you really motivated him. Have you got any more bribery in that box of yours?
I grimaced. At least today was easy. It was almost a sleight of hand trick itself, bringing down the warm slippers and hiding them for Joey. Luckily, his Xbox had taken most of his attention. I almost wanted to leave it for another day, but I was excited as him. Joe, you ready?
I gotta go,
he said into his microphone and left the console running. We sat in the living room. I turned out the main light, set the lamp in the corner ever so dim, and draw the curtains closed. I was worried I was overdoing it, but the setting was half the illusion. Are you sure you're ready? He nodded again, so excited that he scrunched his eyes shut and a smile beamed from ear to ear. This may be slightly scary. Are you okay with that?
I don't scare.
Now, it was my turn to smile. Close your eyes, I said, and he did. On July 3rd, 1888, no one had heard of Edwin Crowe and his wife Eliza in the days. Their landlord Charles Court believed them to be in their room, but was unable to rouse them by rapping on their door. He entered to find Eliza still breathing, but covered in blood. As I said those words, I stopped. It wasn't exactly the same as my father told it, but as I spoke, the words spilled out with a fluency that shocked me.
What happened next?
Joey said, and I realized I must have been silent for a while. I'm not sure, I said, suddenly aware the story was more macabre than I remember.
It's scary,
he said with a grin in his voice. The room was reminiscent of a slaughterhouse. As I said it, I winced, but Joey giggled. I was glad my wife wasn't here. Eliza lay on the floor. A growing puddle of blood emanated from her stomach. Her husband, Edwin Crowe, sat motionless in his chair. She beckoned Charles over and whispered to him. I didn't mean to do it. I was defending myself, she said. I have to get you help, Charles insisted. I don't want my husband to go like that. Can you give him his pipe? I crept over to Joey and placed the pipe in his mouth. He jumped, briefly. Can you give him his top hat? Eliza asked. Gently, I put it on Joey's head. It fell further than it would do on a grown man and rested on his ears. Thank you. Can you put his slippers on his feet? I don't want him to get cold. As I pushed the slippers onto his feet, he gasped. They're still warm! And I laughed. Joey opened his eyes and walked around the room, holding the pipe in his hand.
I'm Edwin Crowe, and I murdered my wife, he said.
That's not what happened, I said, finding it hard not to laugh as he stomped around the room in footwear many sizes too big, thrusting out the pipe before putting it back in his mouth and pretending to puff. He coughed.
Ew, it tastes nasty.
You're not supposed to suck on it, I said, and he handed it to me, before racing out of the room saying,
Mom, look, I'm Edwin Crowe.
It wasn't how I reacted all those years ago, but I was happy to see him happy. Moments later, he returned and asked,
Have you got any more card tricks?
I don't, I'm sorry. His shoulders deflated. He flung the slippers off his feet, and he went back to his room, still wearing the top hat. I sat and turned on the TV and poured myself a glass of whiskey. My wife came in sometime later and sat next to me.
So, how'd it go?
All right, I said. He wasn't scared, if that helps.
Not good then?
He enjoyed it, I think. He's still wearing the top hat, if that means anything. I guess the way my father did it was much better. I took a sip of my drink.
You should call him.
You know, I think I will.
I've got some work to do,
she said, pecked me on the cheek, and disappeared into her office. It was only 7:30. I had time. I was nervous as the phone rang. I wanted to hang up. Each time I'd spoken to him in the last month, he had become more and more distant. Though he was happy. He asked less questions and didn't hang about. That was good, in a way. He wasn't relying on me as he had done in the years previous. Those times were horrid. He'd phone me multiple times a day asking when he was going to be picked up for daycare, and I'd have to explain that it only happened on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Every day was the same. They've forgotten me again! And I'd need to explain every day.
Echo Pines Nursing Home,
the man with an accent said. Can you put me through to the top floor?
One moment, please.
A few seconds later, an older woman answered, and I asked to speak with my father. I heard her stomp the hall, and in the background, an exchange happened. After a couple of crackles, my father answered. Hello? Hi, Dad. It's John. Oh, my boy! How nice it is to hear from you. I was happy. It was a lottery, which father I'd get, and today was the good one. How are you? We played pinochle today. Meredith is such a nice woman. That sounds like fun. I wonder if he had, or whether it was a memory from another time. How are you? How's Jason? Joe, Dad. He's good, in fact. I showed him one of your tricks today. I used to do magic when I was younger. I know. I showed him one of yours. Do you remember the slippers, the smoking pipe, and the top hat? He went silent. It was as if he was arguing with someone in the background. Edwin Crowe murdered his wife, left her all bloody. Dad? I played pinochle today. Meredith can be a bitch. She cheats. I could hear the anger in his voice. What did you say about Edwin Crowe? You never mentioned that when you showed me the trick. I even warmed up the slippers. Eliza lies! Eliza lies! Banish him before she comes! I heard sounds of a struggle, and a man's voice I didn't recognize announced himself.
I'm sorry, sir. Are you John?
I am.
I think something has disturbed your father. Are you okay to call back tomorrow?
Okay, I said, but the line was dead before I hung up. I began to pour myself another drink.
How'd it go?
My wife asked, and I opened my eyes. I hadn't realized I had fallen asleep. Sorry?
The phone call with your dad.
Fine, I lied.
I'm going up to bed. When should I expect you?
I glanced at my glass. It was almost empty, and the bottle almost full. I paused the TV. I'll finish the program I'm watching and I'll be up.
Okay, hun.
I wasn't interested in the TV. I just wanted an excuse to have another glass to try and forget the conversation with my father. I sipped it at first, then felt so cold I shivered, and knew it was time to go to bed. As I got up, I spied the slippers on the floor. In a way, wanting to connect with my dad, I put them on, realizing how well they fit me now. A tingle sparked up my spine. An uncanniness that, at first, wasn't obvious, but very quickly was. The slippers were warm. Creepily warm. I bent over and placed my hand at the carpet to confirm what I was feeling. It was cold. As I walked out of the room into the stairs, I was aware I was being watched. I didn't look back. I didn't want to. To do so would mean acknowledging the impossible. Instead, I made my way to our room and flopped into the bed, falling asleep almost instantly. I was awoken by something I couldn't place. I heard it again, almost a moaning from afar.
"Susie, do you hear that?"
I said, trying to rouse my wife, but she didn't wake up. "Susie," I said again, quickly and sharply, in the hope she wouldn't know it was me.
"I'll do the account in the morning,"
she murmured before falling back to sleep. A coward in life that I was. I mustered the courage, feeling my head thump from the alcohol. As I rounded to the top of the stairs, I could hear it more clearly. In a daze, I descended the stairs and came to a stop at the threshold of the living room. I rubbed my eyes in astonishment. It was reminiscent of a slaughterhouse. A woman lay barely breathing on the floor, and in a chair, a ghost-like figure in a suit sat. His eyes stared motionless at the far wall. I rushed over. "What happened?" I said. I couldn't hear her, so I approached.
"I didn't mean to do it. I was defending myself,"
she said. "I need to get you help," I insisted.
"I don't want my husband to go like that. Can you give him his pipe?"
I looked over the carpet and saw it lay near where Joey had sat. I didn't even think. I picked it up and placed it in the man's mouth.
"Can you give him his top hat?"
the woman asked. I didn't have it. In a dreamlike state, I was confused and remembered Joey wearing it as he left. I crept up the stairs, trying hard not to wake anyone. I peered into his room to see him sleep softly. He was still wearing it. Gently, I put my hand under his back and lifted him up and slid the hat from his head. He didn't wake, thankfully. As I entered the living room, the woman was no longer on the floor. She stood next to the man in the chair and softly smoothed his hair. She moved her hand to let me place the top hat on his head. I could see the wound in her stomach leak blood.
"Thank you. Can you put his slippers on his feet? I don't want him to be cold."
I looked down at my feet to see the slippers still on them. I obeyed as if in a trance. His feet were cold and stiff as I did my best to push them into place. The next few moments were a blur. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I must have done that, as the next thing I knew, my wife was waking me up.
"You drank yourself, stupid,"
she sounded irritated. I pushed myself on my elbows and frantically surveyed the room, seeing that there was no blood. No one invited visitors. It must have been a dream. She was upset with me in the morning, said that if I do that again, I can sleep on the couch for a week. With an aching head, I saw the props for my trick scattered around my broken body. With my tail between my legs, I picked them up and returned them to the box. As I looked at it, the shimmer from the varnish no longer left me in awe, but was a reminder of my flaccid attempt to reproduce what my father had performed for me. I sat next to it, no longer feeling the melancholia I felt before. I felt sad that I wasn't able to give my son what my father had given me. Instead, it gave me crazy dreams and an earful from the wife. It was hard to put everything back in while still able to close the lid, like a game of Tetris. So, I took it all out and tried again. I saw some scribbles on some sheets of paper I had not seen before. It was my father's writing. It was the trick, step by step. 1. Props, smoking pipe, stove hat, and slippers. 2. Introduction story. 3. Place smoking pipe in mouth. 4. Place stove hat on head. 5. Place slippers on feet. 6. Eliza lies. Tell her to. The rest of the note was unintelligible. I phoned the nursing home to ask for my father. They said he's taken ill. I cannot visit because of the lockdown. They asked who Eliza is. Was it his wife? I have pleaded with them to let me talk to him. They've asked me to call back later in the week. The last few nights, Joey has come into our room saying he can't sleep, that he hears voices from downstairs. I know who it is, but I can't tell him. I don't want to tell him, and I don't want to check. I've been slipping my wife sleeping pills. I don't want her to worry, too. I'll wait until my father gets better, then I'll ask him. I'm sure he'll remember. I need him to. I put the slippers in the trash 3 times. I don't want to ask my wife if she keeps bringing them back in. I know she hasn't. I don't want to pick them up again, but I will. I'll put them in the trash every day if I have to. I just can't stand how warm and sweaty they are. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.